Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining today. The launch call on Retail Fights Ebola. You'll have an opportunity to share questions down in the lower right. There's a chat button down there. You would be able to add information there and to send questions. We will use those for later. So you can just go through, use the chat information, and I'll answer questions as we get further along in the broadcast. A lot of people are now just attending the broadcast. So I'll go ahead and get started for the sake of time and allow all of you to be able to get in there and operate properly. So we're going to start off just a little bit talking about retail ROI. What is retail ROI, or who is retail ROI? Well, we started about 6 years ago. We started at the Oracle Open World event. There was a meeting between myself and Paul Singer. Paul was a huge adoption advocate, and he was the former CIO of Target and SuperValue, and he pretty much took over Open World, talking about adoption and the need for kids vulnerable kids around the world to find homes. And we had a meeting there to discuss how it would be cool to do something in the retail industry together to make a difference for orphan children and vulnerable children around the world. There are 400 million vulnerable children worldwide, and we wanted to be able to help. Came outside, talked to about 6 or 7 friends that were standing outside. One of those was Mark Milstein. The 3 of us started the Retail Orphan Initiative as the original donor trustees. And so there are 3 primary areas for retail ROI. Number 1 is raising awareness to the need, that there are this many kids, how big that need is worldwide, and then how we can make a difference with that need. Number 2 is encouraging retailers and vendors to get involved with our core skills and resources to make a difference. We've done that in a number of ways now. One we'll talk about today is in the area of donated materials and overstocks that are available that can really help kids in need. But one where we've been very effective is working with our networks to do career training, go on trips together to make a difference, provide conference calls, work with mock interviews, etc., on several of our trips around the world, where retail executives are engaging kids who are getting a hand up to make a difference in their countries and change their world. It's having a dramatic effect, and that's been a big part of what we do. And then third is to fund existing charities doing great work at the forefront of orphan and foster care, organizations that have feet on the street that are very efficient and doing tremendous work in the areas of clean water, education, disaster relief, and then orphan and foster care. Some of the people behind Retail ROI is 3 trustees now. Sadly, we lost Paul to complications from a brain tumor not long after we started, and Vicki Cantrell, Senior Vice President of Communities for the NRF, graciously joined as the 3rd donor trustee. Then Mark Milstein, who's President of Retail Connections, and my name is Greg Busick. I'm President of IHL Group. Our board of advisors is an esteemed group of folks, and you can see the list here. Jeff Roster, Giri Jabakala, Tom Lisford, Brendan O'Meara, Ed Colopy, Stephen Bozzo, Randy Kasurzen, Paula Paravecchio, Michelle Schoof, Rose Spicer, Diana McHenry, Isaac Kurkowski. It's the only organization that I know of where SAP, Oracle, Epicor, Microsoft, all are working together instead of competing against each other, and it's a very, very good thing. So our impact so far, just to give you a little bit before we get into that, but how we're organized. We are a donor-advised fund under the Giving Back Fund. Our IRS designation comes through the Giving Back Fund, and that allows us to focus on the charity work, do our day jobs, leverage our networks to make a difference, and the donations, the donation receipts, the IRS reporting, all of that, and much more is handled by the Giving Back Fund for a low fee. How low? Well, in the last 5 years, 93.5% of all the funds that have come into Retail ROI have gone out in grants. We've done 76 projects in 17 countries, and by our estimates helped about 145,000 orphan and vulnerable children in the U.S. and around the world. The thing why I say estimated is because a lot of that has been relief effort, and you kind of throw a number on it to try to figure out, okay, we put 1 million meals here, how many people did that help? And that's where we get those numbers. In addition, we've done trips all around the world. 110 different people from Retail ROI have joined together from different countries, companies, and different countries, traveling together throughout the world to make a difference for kids. And you can see the countries that are there. It is a really special time to be able to go around the world and travel with colleagues and friends that are involved. Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you if I can get you to speak, if we can hear you properly.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Hallelujah. Tell us a little bit about the trips, because you've been an active proponent in a lot of these areas for Retail ROI.
Yeah, you know, the first trip I went on, I either smartly or foolishly took my 2 teenage kids with me, you know, not without a lot of trepidation. And to be honest, it was literally, and I've said it publicly, and I'll say it now, probably the best $3,000 I've ever spent was the first trip, taking 2 of them. The kids got an opportunity to interact not only in a very difficult environment, you know, hot, humid, tough travel conditions, and they just blossomed. Not only did they do that, but they did that around some of the most important retail and technology executives in the planet, and just an amazing, amazing opportunity. Since that first trip, we've taken them twice now, so 3 times, 2 additional times, and each time it's just been an amazing, amazing experience. The thing that's magic about these ROI trips versus, like, say, a church trip or, you know, other kind of a group is the kids go on these trips. First of all, they don't know anybody, and they're meeting kids from all over the country in that first 4 or 5 minutes, or first 4 or 5 hours sometimes. Everyone's kind of looking at each other going, you know, this is going to be the worst 3 days of my life. And about 20 minutes into it, all of a sudden, the kids begin to not only interact with their peers, but also we as an executives. And it is an absolutely amazing, amazing experience. And I've seen it now 3 times personally. The best money we've spent as a family, without a doubt, Greg, without a doubt.
Sorry, I put myself on mute there. Really appreciate that, Jeff.
That's a first.
Yeah, so true. As you can tell, we're all friends in this as well and don't mind digging at each other. So moving on, I want to move on a little bit to Liberia and just talk about the desperation and the situation in Liberia there. It's very critical to understand a little bit about Liberia, where it is. You can see the little red dot over here on the screen. It was started as a country of repatriated U.S. slaves. The capital is Monrovia, and it's named after President James Monroe here in the U.S. In area, it's about the size of New Jersey. There are about 4.1 million people there, and they're heavily concentrated in 2 major areas, Buchanan and the capital of Monrovia. Just to give you an idea of the desperation there, I've got a few statistics here. In the United States, the GDP per capita income is $53,143. Liberia is $412. To put that in perspective, in the world's worst, Haiti, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, has a GDP per capita in the $600 to $700 range. So Liberia is even poorer than Haiti. Where it really comes into play with what we're dealing with Ebola is in the number of ambulances that are available for the country. In the United States, there are 48,000 plus ambulances. In the country of Liberia, there were 5 before we got involved. 5 ambulances for the entire country, or an area the size of New Jersey. It was taking upwards of 4 days to remove somebody that was infected with Ebola, and that's still the case across the country, and a big problem because after treatment, after day 5 of infection, usually means that person doesn't survive. So there's 1 day of window for these people in a lot of cases once they get infected. The population per ambulance, you can see that 820,000 people per ambulance. Where it's also extremely devastating is in the area of doctors. We have 425,000 plus doctors in the United States. The country of Liberia had 85 before this outbreak, and about half of them have died because they didn't have the protection at the point where the patients were most infectious. And so that has caused just an absolute horrible situation. Now, we've been involved in Liberia for several years. We began 5 years ago with a clean water project, and then we had a school that we would build. So if you look on the left side, this was a clean water project. That's actually Sammy and that's Stephen that are pumping the water in rehab at the home, the orphan home school in rehab. You can see in the middle is a school we actually built. This came from donations from Intel and HP of our Super Saturday event, helped pay for a brand new school. This was the ribbon cutting ceremony that happened. We built that entire school for $30,000 US. So that's been was a big project that we continue to be involved with. And then on the right, partnering with More Than Me, this is the computer lab that we put in September of last year. This is pre-Ebola, and these are the girls seeing the computers for the first time, and you can see the joy on their hearts. And one of the greatest things I ever got was an email that showed that they could now email and they could communicate out and do internet searches and be able to pull down information and get a first world education in a third world country. Oh, before I go there, I wanted to go back to Diane Cerulli from Epicor. She has gone on the trips before to Liberia, and I wanted to give her an opportunity to share a little bit about her experiences there.
Sure, Jeff.
Diane?
Yep. Yeah, so I went almost exactly 2 years ago next week to Liberia. I went with Jeff and a few other people, and we visited 2 Life Song schools and orphanages, as well as a third school also run by Bishop Emmanuel and his wife Ramona, who are just, it's amazing what they are giving back to these children who have, the area we were in, no electricity or running water, something that we all take for granted. They do have roofs over their heads that are not leaking, but I can't really say that about the kids that in the community that they did. And thanks to Retail ROI, they had more civilized bathrooms, a bed to sleep in, although not one that you and I would feel as comfortable in because it was a very thin foam mattress on a wooden bunk bed, but a bed, needless to say. Food in their bellies, education, and most importantly, they had hope. And that hope was being brought from Ramona and Emmanuel and all of the caregivers that were there for them to really have a better life and to be able to live and work in Liberia on their own because they had people who care for them. Who took the time to teach and mentor, as Greg said earlier. We're doing a lot of mentoring with them, too. And that is the whole purpose of what we're trying to do with the kids. And it's all been made possible through the partnership with LifeSong as well as the support for Retail ROI. That was all obviously before Ebola, and so I am concerned that that hope is being diminished somewhat for them in the country because things are obviously changing for them. But I think with the work that everybody's doing, we hopefully will get that back. On the same trip, we also got to visit the kids that Katie from More Than Me was also given this hope to, and the state had just recently given them a building to build an academy. So this past year, 124 girls from the poorest of poorest areas in West Point that I only saw from afar have received education and care all from that building. And a year later, that academy is now the home base for the community-based Ebola-free coalition that Katie has started. It's providing immediate response to the life-saving community needs in order to end this epidemic. It's working to educate and provide information to the community. It's identifying, treating the sick. I know they have their own ambulance as well that is being used. Unfortunately, it is cremating the dead and also helping to reintegrate the survivors while also supporting the children and the family that have been affected this last several months. So I have the utmost respect for LifeSong and for More Than Me. and the impact that they've been having on Liberia before Ebola, and now even greater respect for them afterwards and what they've been able to accomplish through this crisis. So, but they need additional funds, and they need additional materials to continue this courageous effort, and that's, I think, where we all come in, and where Greg's going to talk about how we can continue to help both those organizations.
And you got to do the hike up the little mountain to the school where you had to step over bombed out boulders and everything, almost like you were going through a hike through the forest. But that was the actual opportunity to get to the school the kids were in. And the new school is the former State Department building that's been refurbished. And they got one good school year in before school stopped because of Ebola. You can see the difference. I mean, you can see the computers here and the quality of that classroom and the desks. I can assure you the school we saw before this didn't look anything like this. It was essentially, how to explain it? You essentially had cement blocks with big boards across them. And at one point, I saw in one school 56 kindergartners lined up on those boards with no desks, no writing utensils, no nothing there, but that was school. So, okay, so that gives us a little background as to what has happened prior to the Ebola crisis. And this really picked up in July of this year. It's been exploding exponentially in the country due to the lack of ambulances, due to the lack of provisions, due to the lack of doctors and the number of doctors that have died as a result. As mentioned earlier, nearly half the doctors have died due to lack of protective gear. Most all medical clinics have shut down because healthcare workers refuse to work without the protective gear. It's too dangerous. In Liberia, they've had 4,650 cases as of today, 851 of those last week alone, 2,700 deaths, and over 3,400 children, new children, had been orphaned since May due to Ebola. And that's what precipitated a lot of this action we're talking about today. What is not said, though, is that malaria is actually the single largest killer in Liberia. But with no treatment clinics open, the death rate is climbing dramatically because they can't get the medicine and the things that are necessary. Fortunately, because we have been involved, we had 2 of the children of the 700 children who came down with malaria, and they were able to get treatment we had a nurse come to them. And they have survived, and they're improving. The 2 children there in the Marshall community. I'm sorry, I believe one's a Marshall and one is in the rehab community that we've worked in there. So that's the background of the desperation there. I was going to share a bunch of pictures here, but I don't want to use a bunch of incredibly grotesque pictures of children to raise support. I just think that's uncool. If you want to see these pictures, all you have to do is look on Google, look up images, just do Ebola in Liberia, and you will see what it looks like when somebody is dying of Ebola. And you can also watch the 60 Minutes episode that occurred this past weekend as well, and they'll give you all kinds of details of how the gentleman in the United States died. I recommend everybody to watch that just so you can see the heroics of the nurses there, and then you can imagine what it's like in a country that doesn't have anywhere near the healthcare infrastructure that we do or protective gear. So the world's been slow to respond. Most NGOs pulled their personnel out due to Ebola. People ran for the hills. The only people that have come back in that I'm aware of, as Doctors Without Borders has continued to work in there. The U.S. military has just gone in and ramping up what they call Ebola treatment units around the country to expand the number of beds, and made a dramatic impact there in terms of having safe places for the people that get the disease can go to get treated. Sadly, there were families just dumping kids in wheelbarrows and stuff to get them away from the families at the doors. and they weren't taking them in. They were riding taxis and infecting everybody. And that situation is not as severe, quite as severe because of the U.S. military moving in and opening up these ETUs. All that has been happening, but very few have responded with practical aid to help prevent the disease, to help get medicines, and to help with the education to tell people how to not get the disease. And the cases are still growing exponentially. And that's why we are involved in this, and it is to enable the partners on the ground to make a difference in this case. So what have we done so far? We were one of the first aid groups to send in aid in late July, early August. We sent grants to More Than Me and to Love in Action program, which is part of the Life Song for Orphans. More Than Me provided education on how to stay safe from Ebola in West Point, which is the worst slum in Liberia. In fact, when Ebola broke out, the government quarantined 60,000 people. To put that in perspective, West Point is a community that is about the size of a standard U.S. high school, the land of a U.S. high school or a mega church, let's just say, in the United States. 60,000 people live in there in shacks that are anywhere from 8 by 8 to 12 by 12 in size. 5, 6, 8 people, 10 people to a shack. And then they quarantined that area. They roped it off and surrounded it by police. And as a result, the number of cases skyrocketed. Well, More Than Me came in there. Katie is friends with the president of Liberia and the police commissioner, and those all together, they lifted the quarantine in West Point. Katie and More Than Me bought their own ambulance using our funds and the funds from others. And what happened was, instead of taking 3 to 4 days for response rate for new cases and thus more time to infect many others, they were able to diagnose, put together teams and diagnose patients and remove them from there in less than 30 minutes, dramatically reducing the number of new cases there. They trained up their staff. They opened their school to kids. Their guest house, which was meant to be as a revenue generator for visiting people, is now a home for children that are quarantined and been orphaned due to Ebola. Just doing amazing, amazing work, and that's one of our partners. We have many, many links on our website on EbolaRelief.com. You can go down here. All of these stories right here are specifically about More Than Me and the work that Katie is doing. While I'm here, many other things to do about Ebola, excellent articles that are recent. The Vogue article, a photojournal, is a tremendous article there. The New York Times article, Washington Post article are extremely good. Would recommend that everybody take a look at those to get a good feel for what's going on in Liberia there. So I'll go back to this. So the other partner is what we call Love in Action, which is a program outgrowth of Life Song for Orphans that we've worked with for over 5 years in the region. Emmanuel and his team began to do outreach to 6 different communities and put a plan together for supplies. And the funds were used to distribute the education, once again, how to stay safe, hygiene, buckets, bleach, chlorine, powder, food supplies like rice, cooking oil, protein beans to keep people healthy, some vitamins, some medicine was distributed there to make a difference in that region. They also worked in West Point as well. And combined, these 2 charities, among with others, have helped drop cases by 90% in the regions where they've worked, better than anybody else. And it's one of the reasons why the Ministry of Health and Social Welfare and the Ebola Task Force has asked them to expand to other communities, because they've been so effective in what they're doing. So that leads us all to the campaign, Retail Fights Ebola. And what this really is about is practical aid, practical stuff that we can find at any supercenter here in the United States to be donated to be able to help people on the ground. It's financial donations that we can use in the near term, in the next 12 weeks, and then more physical aid that can be used after 12 weeks that can go as donated materials. Now I'm gonna switch back for a second after I go over the goals here. Our goals in the next 30 days are to raise $250,000 in financial donations to serve immediate needs, and $1 million in donated merchandise in categories ranging up above from first aid, hygiene, clothing, etc., to ship over there to make a difference. So I wanted to share just a little bit the list of items that are on here. You can get access to this list on our website. See the list of items needed right here. That'll be continually updated. The first aid supplies, vitamins, gauze, Neosporin, Band-Aids, DEET bug lotion spray to help stave off malaria, cotton rolls. As you can see this list of things, it's basic things that we all have in our medicine cabinets at home that can be found at any dollar store, supercenter, etc. that are there. You'll notice that there is an address code that's here. We ask you to use that address code as the first line for shipping, and we'll go over all those details a little bit later. But that's very important because that actually keys who the donation goes to once it gets there, and we'll be able to stage the container properly for maximum efficiency by doing that. The quantity of things needed, we need people that want to donate everything, and we need people that will donate portions of this. Nicole Taylor will be point person on this, and we'll keep track of how much is donated and what we need, etc. And she and her team will be the ones communicating those needs out to individuals and companies there. But hygiene supplies, toothpastes, antibacterial, chlorine bleach, plastic gloves, heavy-duty gloves, maternity gloves. We are not going to be the hazmat people. That's not what we're doing. That is our goal is to keep people healthy, keep them from getting sick, so that they don't have to go into those ETUs and thus infect many, many other people along the way. Food items such as powdered milk, can't emphasize enough, Gatorade powder is huge, because one of the things that happens with Ebola is the fact that you lose all your fluids and nourishment through the fluids. This is a big, big deal. This even helps the ETUs, not just there. Juice boxes as well. Things that can have some sort of sugar or nourishment there, vitamin water, are a big, big deal. Then we get down to some medical supplies, needles, malaria test. There's a need for malaria medicine as well there, specific malaria medicine that's been requested. Clothing. When an Ebola survivor, somebody survives Ebola, everything in their house is destroyed, everything. All their clothing, the entire home is destroyed. They have nothing left of the meager things that they had. There's a need for just basic clothing, rain boots. The caseworkers going to look for new cases of Ebola are walking around in flip-flops today. They're walking door to door in flip-flops trying to find new Ebola patients. And here in the United States, as you can see, the staff is wearing full hazmat suits and everything. They're wearing flip-flops. And so rain boots are a key thing to help keep them safe, rain suits as well. Linens, bed sheets, towels, washcloths, plastic sheets, mattresses. And then educational items. The schools that we operate have opened to bring the kids in. They're not teaching school, but the kids in the community need something to do. So the kids are actually teaching themselves. They're bringing in teachers. There's teachers for the residential kids that are in the orphan home. Those teachers are still teaching, but the general schools have been canceled. But there's still a need, dramatic need for school supplies. And then miscellaneous items like solar chargers, these for the nurses and the people working into ETUs, mini flashlights and batteries. So it gives you an idea of the types of things we're talking about. We're not talking about a big deal type of thing. We're not talking about huge quantities of things. In fact, any one of these retailers that we are targeting here could handle all of it, almost all of it. The first 3 or 4 guys in particular could handle the entire need of stuff there. So we're hoping retailers will get involved to donate material, look at it as a PR opportunity, however they see fit. But there's a tremendous need, and we have an effective way of getting it there reliably. and to make a huge difference for the people on the ground. So with that, I want to go into how will the donations and the items be used. Well, the financial donations, we talked about $250,000 we're trying to raise in financial donations. Number one, there's a cost of about $6,500 to stage and ship the containers from the United States. We need to pay for that. And then we have those two partners on the ground. This would allow them to purchase immediate supplies, take care of the new orphans and the survivors that are coming to the community. There's a survivors group that has come together that Katie in particular is on the board of, and they have tremendous needs, as we talked about, because they are shunned from their communities. The same thing is true with the orphans there. They are taking in new orphan children and homes. I know the LifeSong Love in Action is creating a transition home. One of the things that is just the ultimate in sadness is when a child, a 4 to 11-year-old child, has lost everything, but they survive. The community and their extended family and relatives are so terrified of them that they're going to get Ebola from them that these kids have no place to go. And those are the children that we are looking to help get into loving homes, get into communities of kids, and be protected from all of the things. I mean, you can imagine being 4 years old and everybody you know has just died, and nobody will take you in. That's unfortunately the very stark reality of Liberia right now. It's hard to put your head around unless you look at the pictures. You know, like I said, there's many resources that'll show you the pictures, but it's extremely real. It's very real. And as much as we deal with the fear mongering and all the other garbage that's going on in the media right now here in the United States, Ebola is very, very real in Liberia, but and having dramatic impacts on that community. So those two partners would do that, and then there's the distribution in a variety of communities to make a difference and to help get through this crisis period. And if the funds go beyond those needs, we have other partners that are active in Liberia that we do work with in other countries that we know about that we can actually use those funds for. We just haven't worked with them in Liberia. We have 6 or 7 different projects with some of these guys that we've trusted for years and doing trips with and everything else. They have projects specifically in Liberia that we can partner with as well. So that's where the funding component goes. When it comes to the merchandise donations, we're going to ship the containers from the United States, and our goal is to have all these donations, or have the bulk of these donations in the next 30 days. And then we will ship them, and the goal is to have them there by January 1. So the money is to get them to the point of being able to survive until January 1. The materials is to help them expand once they get there in January. So the same two groups we talked about for the financial donations will get significant portions of the donation to help them expand and what's going on. And then the Ebola Task Force will use the rest to go to needed hotspots as requested by the Liberian Minister of Health and Social Services. Where the greatest need is where those materials will go. Now, just with our two partners, there are up to 52 different distribution points for aid in the northern part of the country. Liberia, Monrovia is in the northern part of the country in that port. 52 different distribution points that are available just from those two partners and the people they're affiliated with right there. Once again, if merchandise donations exceed what we requested here, we have the opportunity to extend to other partners in the Monrovia area as well as through the port of Buchanan. My story on Liberia goes way back some 20 years in involvement, and Buchanan was where I was planning to actually go at one point in time to serve and to help out. And so that option still exists should we go beyond what's needed in this campaign. So what's the multiplier effect here? We're estimating that this initial wave of donations will help at least a minimum of 300,000 people survive and avoid Ebola. The supplies will help at a minimum about 5,000 homes, as well as the orphan homes. Once again, where we talked about, there's already 700 kids that we've been working with in Liberia for up to 5 years. The average family home has 6 people living in it, and it's basically the size of your kid's bedroom, a 12 by 12. It's a very conservative impact on infections if we do the math here. But once one person in the family gets infected, everybody gets infected very quickly because of people throwing up and diarrhea and everything else. Ebola is extremely contagious if any bodily fluid comes in there. So, and as well, each person we're estimating would infect a minimum of 10 people before getting the proper medical treatment, which is extremely conservative once again. If you look at what happened to the quarantine when people, when the nurse flew on the plane, there were several hundred people that were in quarantine, and they were not, even actively contagious at the time when she traveled there. But we estimate 5,000 homes, 6 per home, 10 people infected per 300,000 people. 300,000 lives could be saved from this. And this does not include lives saved from basic hygiene and access to medical care for other diseases like malaria, which remains the #1 thing in Liberia, #1 disease. So who are these partners? Our shipping partner in the United States is the Liberian American Community Organization of Southern California. It is a group that has a special request from the Liberian Ministry of Health and Social Welfare to help. They have been doing those things already. They have quite a bit of media coverage on their site. You can go to their site, there it is, and they've got quite a bit of media on their site as well for where they're involved. And this is a great map. This will show you where Monrovia is versus where Buchanan is in the country, and these are the major areas. Ebola broke out in this area and quickly spread down into this area here, and this is where the hot spots, and this is where our partners are right in this particular area here. But there's also opportunity to expand down here once again if we exceed the donations that are involved. But several things here that you can go through, get that information on them, on our shipping partner there, the LACOSC organization there. They will stage and ship the containers for us if we can get the materials to them. And we'll talk about that in just a second. The materials by ship-to-store or direct shipments to them, they can get them on the containers and ship. In Liberia, we've talked about More Than Me. We've talked quite a bit about that. Just a couple things. That school was opened by the president, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. That's an actual L. My apologies there, President. The founder, Katie Myler, is on the Ebola Task Force, and we have done 2 projects with them already. Love in Action, we talked about, completed 7 different projects with them, a variety of different things from schools, bathrooms, clean water. They've already done outreach to 5 different communities. Emmanuel Jones is the head of that. Emmanuel survived Civil War there. He was orphaned at 7 years old and opened up several years ago orphan homes to help kids that grew up, would have otherwise grown up like himself, and making a huge, huge difference. And a key part of this, finally, is not one of the 700 children in our care and these charities before Ebola broke out has gotten Ebola. Not a single person has. So how the process works: financial donations can be made on our website, www.retailroi.org/donate. Merchandise donations, we're asking everybody to go through the form on the website there. There's a different process for each person, different group. Retailers can ship to store, manufacturers and vendors and individuals would ship direct to another address for things there. And we can certainly get you any donation receipts that you need through Retail ROI for that. it's an important thing for individuals. We're not taking any used items at this time. A lot of people want to donate clothing and donate the clothing items as used clothing. We're not Goodwill. We have no way of staging that and boxing it up, but we do need your help in many, many different ways. We need you to leverage your network and media contacts, social media contacts, to share the campaign, to call on your own retail contacts and local media. You can use these hashtags at RetailROI, hashtag Retail Fights Ebola, hashtag End Ebola. That will get the most coverage out there. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, press releases, articles, blogs, whatever you need there. We can make people available for interviews. Contact Jeff Kettner for key press FAQs. We also need a mass of people to call on retailers and product manufacturers to make donations and ask them to get involved. We can help you with that contact information. We have the community relations contacts. We have the chief marketing officer contacts. We have the head people, the people that are buyers and merchandising folks that are there that can make this happen. If you would like to be involved, we're asking you to fill out the form that can be found on the Ebola relief page at our website to be able to make a difference. And we'll have sample letters you can use and other things that you can use to go out for the request. So Nicole, do I have you on the line? Nicole? I think we might have lost Nicole. Nicole, are you there? Okay, we've lost Nicole. We're having technical difficulties, so I'll just go through this. The inquiry process. The reason we want to go through the form, and you would get that form with the I want to get involved on the website. Once again, the Ebola relief page, is that would be routed to the right person. We've got different people to help based on whether it's a retailer, manufacturer, or individual, or press. That information will be going through those different contacts there to provide you the right information you need and the right kind of letters you need to do to go after these retailers. So once again, you're going to go through the form on the website to go through that. You can also send a note to Ebola Relief at retailroi.org. That'll come through as well, but it will save us time if you go through the form that I want to get involved. So the logistics process for the materials for retailers, the retailers can either ship to store or direct to the shipping partner. The manufacturers would ship directly to the shipping partner. So if this is Pfizer or Abbott Labs or Johnson & Johnson, and they're making a donation, it would go right to the loading dock, and they would be able to get that staged and ready to go. Once it's shipped, then it goes overseas and will go in through the port of Liberia to a special area for relief containers that is controlled by the Ebola Task Force in Monrovia. In advance, we will also send the manifest to each individual organization that we're working with. And those materials will be split, once again, between Love in Action, More Than Me, and other NGOs that are on the ground. Why will this be effective? It already is with the limited relief we've been able to provide. As I mentioned before, 90% drop in the cases when the hygiene, education, and food aid is combined. The food aid and the hygiene open the door to provide the education to keep people safe. And if we can prevent new cases and new Ebola infections from happening, that is the most effective way to reduce the overall number of cases and the number of deaths. And it's also to reduce the threat of coming to the United States. These partners that we're talking about are the people who stayed when everybody else left, and they doubled down in their efforts to help this country. More Than Me was on summer break. Katie in particular was in New Jersey with her family, and as soon as she saw that things were breaking out in quarantine, she got on a plane and flew back and got in the middle of it. Emmanuel has been doing this for years, and they have watched this country suffer. These folks are heroes. They are heroes, and we have no doubt whatsoever. I stake my personal reputation on it that these materials, if they effectively can make it through and get to those organizations, will be used and effective in getting out and helping reduce the number of things there. These core partners have proven themselves time and time again. And then finally, we will verify all donation documents, document case studies on all of these relief efforts. We've done that time and time again on the Retail ROI website. You can see all of that information down here in this Where We Serve side. There's case study after case study. If you go to the Liberia section, you're going to see many of the projects that we've done already that will pop up here. Videos, things that we've done already in Liberia, some of the relief efforts that are involved, some background on each one of these projects and what's going on there. So other resources that are available on our website, you can, the donate button up in the top, that'll get you there. Ebola relief button will get you to the Ebola page. How to get involved, our TRIPS Super Saturday is our primary funding mechanism. Other news media, newsletters and stuff, and Where We Serve there. Then the links we spoke about and I showed earlier on the Ebola media coverage down below. As you can see, the headline news there for all of those guys. With that, I'm going to turn it over to your questions and see what questions came through the chat button. Okay. I'm not seeing any questions that came through. If you tried to send a question, I apologize for that. You can send questions via these addresses: Ebola Relief at retailroi.org, Nicole at retailroi.org, or Greg at retailroi. If you're with the press and you have a press inquiry, we ask you to go through Jeff Kettner, Jeff at kettnergroup.com. And this is Jeff's phone number, 512-452-0486. Once again, 512-452-0486. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining today. We really appreciate you being here. We will record this. We have recorded this session. The session will be available on our website after this call. Thank you very much.